I want to try a little experiment to kick things off. I want you to imagine a rhythm, a really fast driving triplet beat.
Okay.
It's happy. It's the kind of music you'd hear at a countryside festival, maybe with a harp playing, people dancing, dust kicking up under their feet. It's catchy, it's upbeat.
It sounds like a party anthem. That's exactly what you're describing.
Exactly. It's a polka paraguaya. But here's the twist. While your feet are tapping to this happy rhythm, I want you to listen to the lyrics. Because the singer isn't talking about love or beautiful scenery or a great party.
Right.
He's listing the names of dead men. He's describing the specific caliber of artillery shells raining down on him. He's describing heads rolling on the ground.
It creates a massive case of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You're hearing joy, but you're processing horror. Your brain doesn't know what to do.
It really is. You think you're listening to a folk song, but you are actually listening to a war documentary, a journalist's report from the trenches, written while the bullets were literally flying overhead.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We are looking at the song 13 Tuyuti.
Which was originally titled Nanawa de Gloria.
Right. And this isn't just a tune. It's considered the supreme anthem of the Paraguayan polka. The sources call it an epopeia. An epic.
And today, we're going to look at how a soldier poet used this song to document one of the bloodiest battles in South American history.
And how he basically codified the identity of a nation in the process.
So we have a stack of sources here: historical articles, linguistic analysis of the Guarani lyrics, biographies of the author Emiliano R. Fernández, and military reports on the Battle of Nanawa.
It's a fascinating mix because it just blurs the line between art and hard historical record. Usually history is written by the victors, in comfortable offices 10, 20 years later.
The ink is dry, so to speak. Right. They have the benefit of hindsight.
Exactly. But this history was written in pencil on crumpled paper by a guy named Emiliano R. Fernández, who was right there in the mud with his regiment. He wasn't looking back at the war. He was looking at the war.
So before we get to the lyrics describing the carnage, we need to set the stage because the context here is everything. We're in the Chaco War.
The Green Hell.
1932 to 1935. Paraguay versus Bolivia. And we are zooming in on a specific location, Nanawa. Why does this one spot matter so much?
Nanawa is crucial. If you look at the map of the conflict, Nanawa was the hinge. It was a strategic point that offered access to the Paraguay River.
And if you control the river,
you control the war. The river is the highway. If Bolivia takes Nanawa, they have a direct line to threaten Paraguayan supply lines and potentially major cities like Concepcion.
So it's a do-or-die location.
Absolutely. If Nanawa falls, the whole defensive line might crumble.
So on January 20, 1933, the First Battle of Nanawa kicks off. And this isn't a skirmish. This isn't a patrol bumping into another patrol in the woods.
No, this is a massive coordinated offensive. And on the Bolivian side, you have a character who honestly feels like he was written for a movie script.
General Hans Kundt.
The German general. A German military officer commanding the Bolivian troops. And his presence there provides such a stark, almost cinematic contrast to the Paraguayan defenders. You have the European military doctrine, the Prussian discipline.
The heavy machinery.
All of it, represented by Kundt.
And the sources suggest he brought a fair bit of Prussian arrogance with him, too. He wasn't exactly impressed by his opposition.
To put it mildly, Kundt was incredibly dismissive of the Paraguayan defenders. He had this very rigid European view of warfare. He looked at the Paraguayan fortifications and the troops who were often under-equipped, and he famously believed he would find only pure prairie.
Which is Guarani.
Yes, and it translates roughly to thin skin. It implies they were weaklings, cowards, people who would fold under pressure.
And he ignored his own officers.
He essentially ignored warnings from his own officers.
Yeah.
Even the Bolivian president tried to warn him, but Kundt was convinced of his own superiority.
He thought it could just roll in.
He thought he could just march in with superior firepower, shock and awe, and the fort would fall in a day. He brought about 6,000 troops to the party, along with heavy artillery and air support.
He was expecting a coronation.
He was expecting a parade.
But instead he ran into Regiment 13, the Tuyuti. And this is where our songwriter comes in, Emiliano R. Fernández. And I think it's important to stress this again. He wasn't a propaganda writer sitting in the Capitol. He was a soldier. He was holding a rifle.
Precisely. And that's what makes the song 13 Tuyuti so unique as a historical document.
Yeah.
It functions as a chronological chronicle of the battle.
Not abstract at all.
No. Most war songs are vague. They talk about glory and honor and the fatherland in the abstract. They want to evoke a feeling, not a fact.
For king and country, that sort of thing. Very high level.
Exactly. But Emiliano gives you the data. He gives you the date, the weather, and the names.
He literally logs the date in the lyrics. He calls January 20th a Friday Rovesi.
A sad or serious Friday.
And he name-checks his chain of command. It's like a roll call. He mentions Colonel Luis Irrazábal, he calls him Mi Comando Ira, and Colonel Brizuela.
And let's not forget Mayor Caballero, whom he refers to as the Lion of the Chaco.
Wow. Imagine writing a song today about a battle and including your middle manager's name.
It sounds funny to us now, but historians love this. This specificity is why they treat the song as a primary source document. It validates the chain of command, but more importantly, it validates the morale.
Right.
It shows the affection and respect the troops had for these leaders. They weren't distant figures. They were the lion and my commander. It shows a cohesion that Kundt completely underestimated.
But the most powerful image in the song, and I think the concept that really defines this entire battle, is the metaphor of La Muralla Viva.
The living wall.
Beches.
Gives me chills. It should. It encapsulates the desperation and the strategy of the Paraguayan defense in 2 words. You have to remember the mismatch here. Bolivia had the money, they had the German general, they had the tanks, the artillery.
Paraguay was poor.
Very. They didn't have the resources to build the Maginot Line. They didn't have massive concrete bunkers reinforced with steel.
So what was the fortification?
It was people. The defense relied on the physical bodies, the heroic Quinta Division, the heroic 5th Division. They were the wall. They absorbed the impact.
And the song vividly contrasts this reality. Emiliano writes about the 105s, the 105mm cannons, and the airplanes bombing them. He describes the earth and the forest shaking.
It sounds terrifying.
You can hear the trauma in the lyrics describing the smoke and the noise.
He creates a sensory experience. He talks about the ratatinang, the smoke, the gunpowder, and the sinanumba, the thundering noise. He's trying to replicate the chaos of the battlefield for the listener. He wants you to hear what he heard.
But the turning point of the song, and of the battle really, is when that superior technology fails. Kundt throws everything he has at them, he shells them, he bombs them.
But the living wall doesn't break. And then the fight gets close.
This is where the narrative shifts from endurance to counterattack, and this is where the song gets incredibly dark.
It does.
The sources say the Paraguayan troops effectively ran out of ammunition at critical points. They are being stormed by 6,000 soldiers, they are being shelled, and their guns go dry.
In a modern movie, this is where they surrender.
Right.
But in the Chaco, they didn't. They pulled out their machetes.
This is the machete Hembepe moment.
Hembepe means sharp edge. It signifies hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
And the lyrics, they don't shy away from what that actually looks like. It's not glorious sword fighting. It's butchery.
It's brutal. Emiliano writes about the skulls of the Indiecitos, referring to the Bolivian soldiers, who were often indigenous conscripts from the Altiplano being scattered.
And notice the metaphor he uses there. It's an agricultural metaphor.
He compares it to clearing brush in a field, right?
Yes. Ikokupe guaychalomita okopi. Like boys clearing weeds in the farm.
That is a horrifying image.
It is. It juxtaposes the mundane rural life these men came from. They were farmers, laborers, with the slaughter they were committing to survive. It speaks to the normalization of violence in that moment.
Just the action is the same, only the target changed.
It captures the psychology of the soldier perfectly.
And we have to talk about the language he is using here. Because he's not singing this in Spanish. He's not singing it in pure Guarani either.
No, he's using Jopara.
Which is the mix.
Right. Paraguay is a bilingual nation, but Jopara is the street mix, the living language where Spanish and Guarani blend together. Emiliano is often called the master of this. He captures the mestizo personality of the people.
Why does that matter for a war song? Why not write it in pure Spanish so the newspapers can print it?
Because by using Jopara, he signals who the audience is. He's not writing for the elites in Asuncion who speak high Spanish. He's not writing for the academics. He's writing for the guys in the trench next to him.
Which makes the song a psychological weapon.
Absolutely. That's a strong term, but think about it. The enemy, the Bolivians, couldn't understand it. Guarani is a cryptic language to outsiders, so it becomes a secret code.
But for the Paraguayans, a unifier.
Exactly. One source calls Emiliano the Teteo Verde Olivo, the olive green Terteus.
Terteus.
He was a Spartan poet who wrote verses to inspire soldiers before battle. The idea is that Emiliano did the same. By turning this trauma into a song about invincibility and the living wall, he reframed the narrative. They weren't victims of shelling. They were an immovable object.
He gave them a story to tell themselves that made them strong.
That is powerful stuff. It's reframing the trauma in real time.
But we have to talk about the guy who wrote this, because Emiliano R. Fernández, he sounds like a handful.
He certainly wasn't your typical disciplined soldier prototype. If you look at his file, he was a bohemian through and through.
I found this anecdote from his work record at the Carlos Casado Company. This was before the war. Absolutely hilarious. They fired him, and the note on his file literally said, "Do not hire him again. He is too much of a partier."
Es muy farista, yes. He was a wanderer. He lived all over Paraguay, Concepcion, Pedro Juan Caballero, San Pedro. He worked as a carpenter, a forest ranger, a scout guide. He couldn't stay still.
And a romantic. The man wrote over 2,000 poems. It seems like every woman he met got a poem.
Glenn Lugo, Leandra, Marciana. The list goes on. He famously referred to his guitar as his mother and his girlfriend. He said without his guitar, he was an orphan.
So you have this lover, this poet, this guy who gets fired for partying too much, and then the war starts, and he transforms.
Well, he brings that passion into the war. He didn't write 13 Tuyuti sitting at a desk years later. He wrote the lyrics during the war.
In the pauses between the shooting?
Correct. He wrote it in the pauses between fighting and eventually finished it while he was wounded in a hospital in Asuncion after the battle. He had seen the carnage firsthand. The ink wasn't dry because the blood wasn't dry.
Now, here is a detail that confused me at first. He wrote the lyrics, but he didn't write the music, right?
That's right. The music was composed later by Ramon Vargas Coleman. This is actually very common in Paraguayan folk music. The poem often comes first. The words are the skeleton, and the music puts the flesh on it later.
But the musical choice, that is very specific. It's a polka paraguaya.
Which brings us back to my opening point. Why choose such happy-sounding music for a massacre? If I wrote a song about a bloody battle today, I'd probably make it a slow, sad ballad, a dirge.
Sure, that's the Western tradition. But to understand this choice, you have to understand the polka paraguaya. It originated in the 19th century, taking the name from the European polka, but changing the rhythm completely.
It uses something called simultaneous polyrhythm.
Okay, break that down for us non-musicians. What are we hearing?
Essentially, you have two different time signatures fighting each other. The melody, the singing, or the harp is usually in a 2-beat feel, 1-2, 1-2. But the accompaniment, the guitar, is playing in a 3-beat feel, 1-2-3, 1-2-3.
So it's like rubbing your stomach and patting your head at the same time.
Exactly. It creates a 68-time signature that drives forward. It's energetic. It's defiant.
He refuses to drag.
Right. If they had set these lyrics to a slow, sad ballad, it would be a song about mourning. It would be about victimhood. But by setting it to a fast polka, it becomes a song about bravery.
A celebration of survival.
It's the celebration of survival. It says, we are the Raza Guarani, and we are still here. So the rhythm itself is part of the message. We are still standing, and we are still dancing.
It turns the memory of the battle into a source of pride, rather than just trauma.
Exactly. It's an act of defiance against this sad Friday. It's saying, you can shell us, you can starve us, but you can't stop us from singing.
Now, Emiliano survived a living wall. He survived the shelling, the machine guns, the thirst of the Chaco, which was a killer in itself. But his ending, it feels like a true crime story. It's incredibly tragic.
It is a tragic irony. He survived the hell of the Chaco War only to die in peacetime. It was 1948, a time of political instability in Paraguay.
And he was at a bar.
He was at a bar, or store bar called Caracalito, in the Loma Cavara neighborhood. And this wasn't a duel. This wasn't a fair fight.
No, it was an ambush. The sources say a shot was fired from the shadows. He was hit.
And he didn't die immediately, right?
No, he suffered for months. He underwent surgery, but he never recovered. He died in September 1949. The magazine Okar Padikumi famously stated he died of a perfida bala, a treacherous bullet.
The man who walked through artillery fire without a scratch gets taken out by a cheap shot in a bar. That is devastating.
It is, but in a way, it cemented his legend as a wandering, suffering poet. He became a martyr not just for the war, but for the lifestyle. And crucially, 13 Tuyuti didn't die with him.
No, absolutely not. I was looking up modern versions of it. It's not a museum piece. You have huge folkloric groups like Francisco Russo, Tercero Namandu, Tierra Dentro performing it today.
And the crowds go wild.
It acts as a bridge. Think about how we learn history. Textbooks are dry. They list dates. January 20th, it was casualty numbers, 2,000 dead. Those are just statistics.
But when a young person today hears that driving rhythm...
When they hear the Sunu Numba...
Exactly. When they sing about the sad Friday and the Lion of the Chaco, they are connecting emotionally to the sacrifice of their great-grandparents. It connects the listener directly to the sacrifice of a whole people.
It's interesting you mention that. One of the articles we looked at mentioned that the song is still sung today to evoke patriotism in young people.
It's a living part of the culture.
Because it validates their identity.
Yeah.
The song ends with a declaration that the Raza Guarani will not end. It affirms that despite the massive powers arrayed against them, like the German General Kundt, the tanks, the civilized warfare, they held the line with nothing but machetes and grit.
It's a story of the underdog winning, encoded in music. I want to circle back to one specific lyric that really stuck with me. He says, Oikove pukuva mante o hechipane, which means,
only those who live long enough will see. He's predicting that history will remember this, and he was right. He says the Regiment 13's trail will be adorned with letra de oro, gold letters, in the new history of tomorrow.
Talk about confidence.
He knew. Even while sitting in that trench, surrounded by smoke and dead bodies, he knew they were doing something historic. He knew this wasn't just another fight. It was the defining moment for his generation.
It really changes how you look at a song. It's not just entertainment, it's a document, it's a time capsule.
It is a historical document, a psychological weapon, and a testament to resilience. It's all those things wrapped in a 68 rhythm.
So we've unpacked the battle, the man, and the music. We've seen how a party-loving poet became the voice of a nation's defense.
And how a song can preserve the raw, gritty reality of war better than a sanitized report.
Which leaves us with something to think about. We live in an age of instant information. Everything is tweeted, live-streamed, and blogged the second it happens. We are drowning in data.
But data isn't memory.
Exactly. For most of human history, songs were the news reports. They were how you knew who won, who lost, and who was brave. So here is the question for you listening right now. If you had to write a song today that would serve as the only historical record of a major event for people 100 years from now, what would that song sound like?
And would it be honest enough to mention the sad Fridays along with the victories? Or would we just try to make ourselves look good?
Emiliano included the mud, the blood, and the fear.
And that's why we're still talking about him almost 100 years later.
Something to mull over next time you hear a catchy tune. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.